a lot less. So, so we'll cover some great information. So give me just a second here, and I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation we put together. And this is this presentation we actually did at the ADPI con, a very similar presentation. So the plan today, if I can get this started here, is we're going to cover, well, first thing I want to give you my legal disclosure. The information is intended for informational purposes only. Consult with your tax or legal professional before implementing any of these strategies we're going to talk about. Everybody has a different situation. So don't think that one size fits all, because there's oftentimes devils in the details. But this is all really good information, will be relevant for you. So we're going to cover today the best strategies to protect your real estate assets. And as you build out your rental portfolio, whether you're doing short-term rentals, long-term rentals, house hacking, becoming part of syndicate deals, it's just making sure that we're protecting everything and getting the most out of our tax savings benefits. And then I wanted to finish up talking about self-directed retirement accounts, because there's some huge benefits we can get. And in the military, we've got the TSP accounts, and you're given the options of the 4 categories you want to invest in. And there's some other things that are outside that. So we'll talk about how we can use self-directed IRAs and self-directed solo Ks to help build your rental portfolio as well. So the first thing is I love using the example. So imagine a guy is driving down the road, runs through a stop sign, T-bones a car. First thing that happens, a guy that got hit, he ends up in the hospital with some broken bones, calls the accident injury attorney. In a wreck, need a check? One call, that's all. And these attorneys, before they take the case, they're going to do an asset search. And this guy that ran the stop sign, let's figure out what does he have that we can take. And it used to be, to do an asset search, it took a lot of time and a lot of money. We'd have to hire private investigators to go dig through county records and try and figure out what you own. Well, now we have Google. And if I have your name and social security number, within 3 to 5 days time, I will know everything about you. And if I don't have your social, for an extra $50, they'll get it for me. So the attorney does a search and he realizes the guy that ran the stop sign has nothing. Does the attorney stop there? No, he says, now hang on a second. The guy that ran that stop sign, was he by chance working for a company when this accident took place? If so, I could sue the company that he's working for. Did he have any alcohol in his system? If so, I could sue the bar or restaurant that served him. Did he have any prescription medication in his blood? If so, I could sue the doctor that prescribed it, the pharmacist that handed it to him, or the drug manufacturer. And that stop sign he ran, was it free of obstruction, or was there something blocking the view of that stop sign? If so, I could sue the homeowner where that stop sign sits. And come to think of it, how many accidents has there been at this intersection? We might be able to sue the city or the county for not having a stop light instead of a stop sign. So it is very unfortunate, but we live in a world that it has gotten so far away from suing someone that's done something wrong to just trying to tie in the deep pockets. So we just want to make sure that you're not the deep pockets. You're not the low-hanging fruit that these people want to go after. Because once they check to see if you're worth suing, they will file the complaint, and that's where the nightmare begins. We go through a process. It could be years of discovery, interrogatory, request for information. If anyone's ever been sued, this stuff is super expensive. If a case doesn't settle within the first 6 months, it is generally going to settle right before a 5-year mark. So during that time, again, costs you a lot of time and money. And when they win, they get a charging order. And they normally pick a dollar amount that puts you right before it does not make sense to file bankruptcy. It makes sense to settle the case. And one of my clients is a trial attorney, and her name is Shay. And I said, Shay, how long have you been a trial attorney? She said, 25 years. I said, and in 25 years time, how many cases have actually gone to trial? And she said, Adam, I don't know if I could count 5 times. We normally settle because we have no idea what these judges are even going to do. If they're in a good mood, bad mood, we don't know. So we try and avoid that the trial, because that's even more expensive. So when we talk about forming your company and forming a corporation or LLC, when you're born, you get a social security number. When your company is born, it gets an EIN number. And it's so crazy that over all these years, a corporation, you own the company, you control the company, but legally, you're not the company. And our government has given, the world actually has corporate entities. They've been around for hundreds of years, but it allows us and they give us these freedoms to operate within the boundaries of being a corporation or LLC. And it is to encourage entrepreneurs and capitalism and growth. So when you form these companies, if you remember a few years ago, we had the Hobby Lobby case where the court said that a corporation or LLC even has religious rights. So it's crazy to think about, but these are the laws. So we want to take advantage of these laws and use them to our advantage. So the right way to do it when we're incorporating, you'll see all these things incorporate for $99. I can tell you right now, you can't get a good steak dinner for 99 bucks. There's pieces that have to be in place. And I actually have, this is a corporate record book that I don't know if you guys can see this or not. You'll see my little video here. This is my corporate record book, and it has inside of it, we have a bunch of legal documents that represent the organization of the business. And that's all that a corporate entity is. But this book is important because oftentimes people will form a corporation or LLC and all they do is file the articles with the Secretary of State, and they don't have the pieces that you have to be in compliance with state and federal law. So when we're forming a company, we do the initial organizational minutes, operating agreement, you have the record book with membership certificates and a corporate seal. It's all the pieces that you need to be in compliance with state and federal law. So you want to make sure that when you're incorporating, we're not missing those pieces. Now, as a real estate investor, you start to think, all right, what do we need protection from? And if you own a property, as innocent as you may be, you're still liable. So anybody gets injured on the property, you're going to get sued. There's construction accidents, real estate contract disputes, contractor disputes or legal action from contractors, and just accidents happen. All the time I'm getting phone calls and emails from different people. And I was at ADPI the week before we did the ADPI conference. I got an email from one of our ADPI members, and he said, my wife got in an accident. She hit a bicyclist, and the bicyclist is a lawyer. What a bad day. So now what do you think is going to happen? Yep, he's going to get sued. So he now is thinking, okay, he wants to protect his cash and his trading accounts, his brokerage accounts. And the problem is you can't do things after the fact. So in his situation, he's screwed. He's, for lack of a better word, because you have to do these things. You got to be proactive and set these things up when we don't have problems. And the biggest question that I always get, well, isn't insurance enough? And everybody buys insurance, but there are so many things that can happen that insurance won't pay or won't pay enough. This is why everyone uses LLCs. And don't take my word for it. The most litigated or dangerous field to be in is food. And if you walk into any grocery store, gas station, every single package you pick up is either going to be a corporation or LLC, every single one of them. Because in food business, if you have people getting sick or any problems, it's not just a lawsuit, it's a class action lawsuit. And so all of these businesses want to operate with the protection. So it's deceiving because we hear the word umbrella and we think that umbrella insurance covers everything. Well, the news flash is that you can get an umbrella policy, $1 million for between $200 and $300 a year. Why is that umbrella so cheap? And the answer is it only kicks in if the underlying policy exhausts its policy limits. So everybody here, absolutely keep a good insurance policy. Let's hope that it covers. But again, there's so many things that can happen. The insurance won't pay or won't pay enough. One of the first times I had a guy, he called because owned a property in New York. He was putting a new heating system in. So they took out those old radiators, and his contractor put that radiator, the old one in the back corner, waiting until the rubbish removal came around. And a kid jumped over the fence and snapped his ankle on the radiator that was sitting there. And of course, he thought, well, I'll call the insurance company. And the insurance company said, yeah, sorry, we don't cover that. Why? Unauthorized debris in the yard. How crazy. So there went $70,000. So the point of forming the corporation or LLC, the most valuable benefit we get is the corporate veil. That's the legal separation between you and your company. So again, you own the company, you control the company, but legally, you're not the company. You're on one side, the business is on the other. And the strength of that veil is decided by the state you incorporate. So you'll hear people talk about incorporating in Delaware, Nevada, Wyoming. And if you're going to start a big company, you're going to sell stock and raise capital, Delaware has the best laws in the country. We would always recommend Delaware. And the state of Delaware makes millions and millions of dollars a year in renewal fees. So Microsoft, Walmart, Disney. Recently, we saw in the news with Twitter, which is headquartered in San Francisco, but it's a Delaware corporation. So Elon Musk was going to be appearing in court in Delaware. Now, Nevada, thanks to the mob, back in the 1950s and 60s, when the mob came to Nevada, they started heavily influencing our politicians to create all these great laws to protect their business operations. And even though the mob has officially moved to Wall Street, Nevada's kept its laws strong for small business. So we're going to cover some details about that. But the most important thing is that care must be taken to preserve the corporate veil. If the veil is pierced, your company will have no protection value whatsoever. So I found this article, this is from the Wake Forest Law Review. It said, piercing the corporate veil has become the most litigated issue in corporate law today. In every case, the plaintiff's intent is to acquire the personal and business assets of the company, and at least half of them win. There was another paper done by Cornell, and they claim 67% veil piercings. And this is only with small business. You can't pierce the veil of Microsoft and sue Bill Gates. This is only for small business that we have to worry about this. It's typically 5 shareholders or less. That's when we have to worry about veil piercing. And for most of you, it's going to be you or you and your spouse doing these investments. And it makes it really easy for lawyers to make alter ego claims, saying, well, you own the company, you control the company, you are the company. This is nothing more than a sham. And I have read in my job, so for the last 13 years before COVID, so starting in 2010, I would travel every weekend. I would do 1 or 2 cities a weekend. And I had students in my audiences that were judges, lawyers, CPAs, financial advisors, super smart people. So I was constantly having to keep on top of these laws. And every state I would go to, I would review what the veil piercing standards are for any of the cases that actually got published that I could read. In every single case, alter ego was every single time. Second most common thing was insufficient capitalization or insolvency. So when you start a company, the question is, did you put in enough capital to cover the risk associated with what you do? And the problem with that is there is no bright line test that exists. How much money is enough? It's completely up to a judge to decide whether or not you've adequately capitalized the business. Commingling of funds or siphoning of funds by dominant shareholders, which siphoning funds, I think we all, if you have a business, you are bringing in profits. Use of the corporate form to perpetrate a fraud, I agree with that one. Failure to observe corporate formalities, it's a really big one. So most states in this country, LLCs have only been around since 1977. And with that being said, all these courts are saying, okay, well, the LLC is a corporate entity, but we have no legal precedent, so we can't just make stuff up. So they apply corporate law to the LLC. So what they look at is failure to maintain appropriate corporate formalities, resolutions, amendments, meeting minutes. And I want to see, I can see everybody that's here. By show of hands, how many of you currently have corporations or LLCs? Few people? Okay. And how many of you have done a good job with resolutions, amendments, and meeting minutes? I don't see any hands. All right. In a room of 1,000 people, I ask that same question. Nobody does it. And so we talk about failure to observe corporate formalities. So even failure to assign ownership in your corporate record book, there are membership certificates, or if it's a corporation, you have stock certificates. And people think, well, it's just me. I don't need to, it's just me. I don't have to worry about that. You do. These are formalities that in the event of a lawsuit, they're going to subpoena your record book, which most people don't have. If they do have, it's certainly not up to date. And they would be lucky if they did any meeting minutes whatsoever. So we have to make sure that your company is formed and that you stay in compliance. And one of the things we do that's unique at NCH, when we're forming the corporation or LLC, we write in the articles of organization or the operating agreement that you have to have one board meeting every year. And so if all we do is have one board meeting, that puts you in a position where they cannot make alter ego claims against your business. And it's silly if it's just you or you and your spouse, you got to have a meeting with yourself. Yep, got to have a meeting with yourself. And in that meeting, there's no legal requirement that any details of this meeting be documented. We only have to document the meeting was held and you were present, or a meeting was held and you and your spouse were present. So you can write on the paper, the LLC will operate the same this year as they did last year, sign it, date it, put it in the record book. That's it. So super easy. But when we're forming these companies, we were talking earlier about doing the corporations versus LLCs. And if you're going to do a corporation, there's C Corps, S Corps, we have LLCs, limited partnerships, and oftentimes in a lot of the syndicate deals, you'll see people doing limited partnerships, and all of these vehicles work. But pretty much every situation that you will ever be in, you can't go wrong with an LLC. They are great for partnerships, single members, protects partners from each other, and it provides the most flexibility from a tax standpoint. When there's single member LLCs, if you just own a rental property, we form the company as a single member LLC that is disregarded for tax purpose, meaning you're not having to file a separate tax return, which is good for when you just have single family homes. And they are just really a perfect tool for any real estate investor in just about every business. So I want to talk a little bit about this Nevada thing because it's a really big deal. So I was telling you earlier that thanks to the mob back in the 1950s and 60s, the mob came to Nevada. They started heavily influencing our politicians to create all these great laws to protect their business operations. And even though the mob officially moved to Wall Street back in the early 90s, Nevada kept its laws strong for small business. It was a big revenue generator for our state. Over the years, Nevada has developed these great laws. So it is the strongest corporate veil. The only time they could ever pierce the veil is if they could prove fraud or manifest injustice, which requires the courts go inside your mind to determine your ill intent. That is the highest standard of any corporate veil in the country. If you're not committing fraud, they can't pierce the veil and sue you personally. Secondly, no minimal capitalization requirements. So we don't have to worry about, did we put in enough money to cover the risk associated with what we do? And now the really big one is Nevada has a law called charging order protection by statute for single member LLCs. So we passed this law in 2011. Prior to that, to get charging order protection, you had to have a multi-member LLC. Nevada passed a law, even a multi-member corporation would provide us with this charging order protection. But in 2011, they passed a law that a single member LLC or a single person corporation will get charging order protection. It is the holy grail of asset protection. So let's say that you got a rental property in Florida or Ohio, accident happens, the insurance company says, sorry, we don't cover that, which happens often. If the plaintiff can demonstrate that you're not able to satisfy the judgment within a reasonable time frame, which is within 90 to 120 days, judicial foreclosure begins. The courts will start foreclosing on cash or assets held by the LLC to satisfy the judgment. Well, under Nevada law, the charging order or the judgment they receive is the exclusive remedy of the judgment creditor, eliminating the possibility of judicial foreclosure. So you become the worst nightmare of these attorneys. They can sue and they can win, but they can't get paid. Can't pierce the veil. You're not committing fraud. can't foreclose on cash or assets. They're stuck with a judgment, hoping you someday distribute a profit. And I was teaching at a class as a rental boot camp in Dallas, Texas. It was October of 2019, right before the pandemic hit. And at the end of class, this guy comes up to me and says, you know, Adam, I hear you talking about the veil getting pierced almost 50% of the time. He said, I'm an attorney here in Texas, and I am in the business of suing businesses. He said, here in Texas, if I see one or two people's name on record, sometimes three, we pierce the veil almost 95% of the time. We have a huge success in veil piercing. He said, if I see Nevada or Wyoming, I won't even take the case. I can't get paid. Yeah, he said, I'm glad more people don't know about Nevada and Wyoming, or I'd be out of a job. So it's truly powerful to have it set up. So the other big one is no reverse piercing. And I'm married, I have 6 boys, and I'm now at 4 of them that drive, and they drive my vehicles. So if they get in a wreck, who do you think is getting sued? That'll be me. So if you get brought into a deposition in other states, you list everything you own, your house, your cars, and you own the LLC, which becomes an attachable asset just like anything else. So they sue you and take the LLC that has your investments. Well, under Nevada and Wyoming law, by statute, no reverse piercing. They can sue you and they can win. They cannot touch the LLC to satisfy your personal debts and obligations. So it protects the LLC from you or from your kids, in my case. And the last one here, we get statutory indemnification. So Nevada is unique. When we form a company in Nevada, our law says that you may be indemnified acting as officer, director, shareholder, agent, or employee of the company if so stated in the articles of incorporation or articles of organization. So here in Nevada, we have to file some extra pages with our articles of organization that says you shall be indemnified. So we take advantage of those indemnification laws. So Wyoming modeled their laws after Nevada, and they didn't put that you may be indemnified. Their law says you shall be indemnified. So in forming an LLC, if you have a pen handy, you'll want to write this down. There's 3 ways you can do an LLC. You can be manager, member, or managing member. Well, the word member means owner, and there is no reason for us to ever put ownership on public record. So we're intentionally setting this up where you are manager. The membership or ownership of your company, we will assign to you or to your revocable living trust for estate planning purpose. So I just remind people, if you have rental properties and you're managing them yourself, and you put an LLC in place, you need to update those lease agreements, because right now you have entered into the agreement with that person. Once you have an LLC, the LLC needs to be entering into that agreement. Anytime a contractor agreement asks for initials, you can just initial with your initials. Anytime a contractor agreement asks for a signature, you will always sign your name, comma, manager, or your name as manager of ABC Homes LLC. By doing so, you're letting everyone know, I'm not signing this contract as an individual. I would never do that. I'm signing as an officer of my company under the protection of my company. So always sign contracts and agreements as manager. So I was sharing earlier kind of the Wyoming side of it. And over the years, Nevada has great laws, but they kept raising their fees over the years. To maintain a Nevada entity now, the state is $350 plus you have to have a registered agent. There's another $227. So we're at $577 for a Nevada entity to renew, whereas Wyoming is $197 registered agent, $60. So $257 as a renewal fee. And Wyoming literally modeled their laws after Nevada. And just like Nevada, we get the charging order protection by statute. The law states very clearly, I highlighted it, that no other remedies. The charging order is the exclusive remedy of judgment creditors. So people that sue you and win, they can sue and they can win, but they can't get paid. They're stuck waiting for you to distribute a profit. And all the lawyers know the game. Now, the question that always arises, all right, how in the world is Wyoming law going to help me in Ohio, Florida, or anywhere else in the country? Well, there's a federal law called the Internal Affairs Doctrine. It is also echoed in every state law statute as well. And it tells the courts very clearly, the laws of the state of incorporation shall govern the internal affairs and liabilities of managers and members of LLCs. So if you have a property in Florida and you get sued in Florida, yeah, we're going in front of a Florida judge. But the judge has two options. Either he or she can apply Wyoming law to the case, or they might recuse themselves and say, yep, don't want to deal with this Wyoming stuff. Go file the lawsuit in Wyoming. Either way, you get the protections of Wyoming. And I told you it's a federal law. Every single state, here's New York, the laws of the jurisdiction under which a foreign limited liability company is formed govern its organization and internal affairs and liability of its members and managers. And the LLC may not be denied a certificate of authority by reason of any difference between such laws and the laws of this state. So if we're operating in New York, we still have to abide by the laws in New York, but we get to protect. The other question is to pierce in the veil or collecting on a judgment, we get the protection of Wyoming. So there is New York, here is California, same exact law. Here's Florida, same exact law. So all of these states offer, they tell the courts they have to follow the laws of the state of incorporation. So just in case anyone was unclear about that. Now, from a tax standpoint, we don't have a state income tax in Nevada. There's no state income tax in Wyoming. Unfortunately, that's not a benefit that you're going to enjoy unless you live in Nevada or Wyoming. If you live in New York, it doesn't matter where the money comes from, you're going to pay New York tax. So currently, I have some people here from Hawaii that you have your Hawaii state income tax, but again, incorporating in another state, you're not filing any additional tax returns. The corporate entity would file taxes exactly the same as if we had formed it in your local market. So good stuff to know. This guy, let's see, here we go. Nelson Rockefeller, he said, the secret to success is to own nothing, but control everything. And that is well said from a very wise person. So I want to talk about shift gears for a second, talk about the tax benefits. Depending on what you're doing, if we're doing passive income, I'll be very clear, there are no tax benefits, whether you have an LLC or not. The taxes are the same. If you have rental properties, passive income, you're not writing off anything extra or different. So when we form LLCs, there's different ways that we can choose to be taxed. If it was a corporation, we would either be a C corporation, files Form 1120, or we'd be an S corporation, that files Form 1120S. With an LLC, we have four options. We could be taxed as a C corp, S corp. We could be a partnership if you have a partner other than a spouse, or if we form a company, we make no tax election as a single member LLC. The LLC is disregarded for tax purpose, meaning as the IRS is expecting all profits and losses just report on your 1040 exactly the same as if you didn't have the LLC. So we get to choose how we want these taxed, and there's a different time and situation for each of these. So passive income and active income, we've got to understand the difference. Passive income, I buy a property, my intent is to hold it for more than a year today. I'm renting that property out. I buy land that I'm sitting on. That is passive income. Passive income can only be offset by passive losses. Active income, I am working to earn the money. So a lot of times in real estate, it's a great way to generate chunks of cash to buy as many rental properties as quickly as possible is to do wholesaling and rehabbing. So if you wholesale a deal, you get a contract, you assign the contract to someone else, and you get a fee. You might get a 3 or 5% fee of the value of the property. So wholesaling is a great thing to do. If you're a private lender, you loan money out, the interest that you receive is passive income. The points that you're charging would be considered active income. So oftentimes a hard money or private money lender will charge 3 to 5 points up front, and then they charge you an interest rate as well. So those points that are being charged are considered active income. You never, ever, ever want to mix active income and passive income in the same company. We always want to keep it separate. So active income is subject to state, federal, and Social Security and Medicare. So this year, Social Security, the first $147,000 you make is you're paying 12.4% for Social Security. Medicare, you're paying 2.9%, together 15.3%. Active income is subject to state, federal, and Social Security and Medicare. Passive income is only subject to state and federal tax appropriately. There's no Social Security and Medicare on passive income. So I want to use this example. So many of you are going to start business operations, whether it's self-employed income of some kind, and whether you're going to continue to be in the military or you have a spouse that may work or do something different. A lot of times, my folks at ADPI have a lot of entrepreneurial spirits where we are doing businesses. So sole proprietor, if you make 100 grand, you're going to pay in 15.3%. That's $15,300 that you will pay into our wonderful social security system. If we set up an LLC and we have it taxed as an S corporation, so we're going to file Form 1120S, the rules totally change. The IRS rules are that you must take a reasonable salary from your company. Reasonable is typically no less than 30% of your net profit. So in this example, some months are more, some months are less. By the end of the year, I worked it out where I've taken at least 30,000 as a W-2. The Social Security and Medicare tax on 30,000 works out to $4,590. So we started with the 100 grand, we took out the 30 grand as a W-2. The other $70,000 is still your money, but the IRS allows you to pay that to yourself as a K-1 distribution, which is not subject to Social Security and Medicare tax. So if all we did is form the LLC and just paid ourselves properly, there's a savings of $10,000. That's $900 a month of money in your pocket. So having that S election and paying yourself properly is super important. And oftentimes I work with people that form LLCs. They don't make the S election. They take the money out as a sole proprietor and they miss out on all these tax benefits. So it's very, very important that when you're forming that LLC, you make that proper tax election. The IRS says we have 75 days from the date of incorporation or 75 days from the year-end date to change the company to be taxed as an S corp. For those of you that might have formed a company in maybe February or March this year and you forgot to make that S election, we are allowed to do what's called a late S election, where we say, hey, we forgot, we request that you start us as an S corp effective January 1st. And they do allow for late S elections when needed. So this picture, this structure is kind of the overall plan and goal. To the right side, we have an LLC for our rental properties. And under that LLC, as you buy residential real estate, even using your VA loan, whether you're house hacking, whatever it may be, if you were just to quit claim the property into the LLC, you're protected, but you just violated the mortgage agreement. So instead, what we recommend is putting each property into its own land trust. We call them real estate privacy trust. That's these little orange things down here. So real estate privacy trust, there's a federal law called the Garn-St. Germain Act of 1982 that when you put property into a trust, the bank cannot invoke the due on sale clause. So you never have to worry about that. These land trusts will separate the liability of each property without having to have a bunch of LLCs. You don't own the land trust, the LLC owns the land trust. So in the event of an accident, do you own the property? No, Your Honor, I don't. Who does? The 123 Main Street Trust. Their very next question, are you the beneficiary of the 123 Main Street Trust? No, Your Honor, I'm not. Who is? The Wyoming LLC or the Nevada LLC, and you're completely protected. They can't pierce the veil. You're not committing fraud. Can't foreclose on cash or assets. You're in a tremendous position of power. So that's our passive side. The active side on the top left, we have an LLC taxed as an S corporation if you're going to be operating a business of some kind. And I put business plan here because oftentimes people start a business without a plan. And I have a team here that does custom business plans. So we have a map to follow to be successful with the business. Now, I want to point out really quick at the very bottom, we have this revocable living trust. If you don't have one, you have got to get one done. Oftentimes we are doing business, building our portfolio for our family. We want to have generational wealth and pass things on to our kids and grandkids. The problem is that nobody ever thinks to the estate planning aspect. So if you have nothing in place, or if you only have a will, if God forbid anything were to happen to you, everything you own will go through probate. Probate costs a lot of time and a lot of money. So the simple answer, get a family trust put together. Our estate planning attorney, when we're setting these up, we talked about that saying, own nothing, control everything. Well, normally an attorney would say, oh, well, this should be the Adam and Claudia Kintigh Revocable Living Trust. There is no law that says we have to have your name in the name of that trust. So my trust, for example, is called the Legacy 6 Dynasty Trust. I use Roman numerals for the 6. It looks nice on paper. Call your trust whatever you want, but do not call it your name. We're going to put your primary residence and any of the membership of your LLCs, we're going to put into that living trust. We also do a super important component. It's called a pour over will. And just like pouring a glass of water, it says anything you forgot to put in the trust or chose not to put in the trust automatically goes in the trust when you die. It's meant as a catch-all for things like vehicles and stuff like that. So this is the overall roadmap, and you might have one piece and not another, and you might not have a business, you just have passive income. So again, depending on how you're operating will depend on how we're going to structure these things. But the solo 401k plan is a huge benefit. And what happens when you leave the military is we have the option of rolling over that TSP. If you or your spouse have any old IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, 457s, TIA CREF, annuity, simple IRA, SEP IRA, inherited IRA, Roth IRA, all these different IRA types, but they can be rolled over into a self-directed account. And I just saw that posting. They were talking about ADPI Capital, where people can invest money into ADPI Capital, and then use that. They're going to be investing in syndicates and other projects. And normally, what you'll find with most syndications is that just to get into the investment, you got to have at least $75,000. A lot of times you've got to have 100 grand. You got to be an accredited investor to get in on any of these deals, but they got great returns. I have clients that are getting 20, 30% returns on these syndications. But the little guys, we don't have that much yet if we're just getting started or building up, and we're not an accredited investor. We don't have that extra 100 grand. Well, ADPI Capital is setting this up to where people can invest. And again, I'm not an investment advisor. I'm not going to tell you what to invest in or how to do it, or when or what to buy. But I will tell you, you can self-direct any of those retirement accounts. Now, if you went to a Fidelity and you said, hey guys, I want to self-direct my account, they're going to say, oh, sure, you're already self-directed. You choose which one of these stocks, funds, or mutual funds do you want to invest in? I said, no. I want to use it to buy property. I said, nah, you can't do that. That's prohibited. You'll be penalized. It is not prohibited. If you write this down, it's IRC section 4975. It is the IRS tax code, IRC 4975. It covers all the rules for self-directed investing. So there's two options that we have. If you have a business, you have an LLC taxed as an S corporation, we could take any of those old retirement accounts and roll it over into a solo 401k. This is a special 401k plan that is sponsored by your company. It's a solo 401k because the business is only you or you and your spouse. You can't have any full-time W-2 employees other than you or you and your spouse. And then what I oftentimes do is if we're just going to make an investment, for example, I'm investing in the fund that Kevin Brenner is putting together with ADPI Capital, then I don't need to have checkbook control over my money. I'll contact our custodian, they'll wire the money to that investment, and off we go. But if you want to buy rental properties, we can do what's called a Solo K LLC. It's an LLC that's owned by your 401k plan, but managed by you. So you now have checkbook control over those funds. We can use that to buy rental properties, do private lending, syndications, whatever we want to do. If you don't have a business, usually the option is self-directed IRA. Same concept, roll it over to our passive custodian. They don't invest your money. We tell them we want to wire that money here, wire the money there. If you're going to buy rentals, again, I set up an IRA LLC. That's an LLC owned by the IRA, managed by you. And it's super powerful. So if you stop and think, well, why do I want to put money into an IRA or a 401k, or why do I want to contribute to a TSP? Well, if you take $1 and you double it every year for the next 20 years, and every year you paid in 35% in tax, at the end of 20 years, you would have a little over $22,000. Not bad. If you take that same dollar, double it every year and pay no tax, At the end of 20 years, you would have over $1 million in that account. No joke. So tax deferred and tax-free growth is incredible. So, but we have to invest in things that are going to make us money. So if we do a self-directed IRA, you can only put 6 or 7 grand a year in. If you have a solo K, you can put between $61,000 and $67,000. IRA, can't borrow from it. If you roll it to any past retirement account, if we roll it to a solo K, now you can borrow from it if needed. A lot of people I work with that flip houses, we borrow from the 401k plan, borrow the 50 grand, use it as a down payment, help cover repair costs, buy a house, fix it up, sell it, and we pay it back. You can do that over and over and over. No taxes, no penalties. There's also IRAs have to pay this tax called the UDFI tax. Solo Ks are exempt. So there's no UDFI. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. It's kind of complicated. And then Roth contributions. Once you start making too much money, the government says, nope, you make too much, you cannot contribute to a Roth account. Solo Ks, no matter how much money you make, inside of that solo K, we have a Roth bucket where I can make contributions up to $20,000 a year, $20,500, or if you're over age 50, up to $27,000 that we can put into Roth accounts. Roth accounts grow tax free. When you pull it out, there are no taxes on it. So Roths are always the preferred route. I was talking to a guy yesterday, and when he first started his TSP, he didn't know that there was an option. They have a Roth option in the TSP. You should certainly look into that, because again, when you pull out money out of a regular retirement account, you're going to pay taxes at your tax rate. Pull money out of a Roth, zero tax. It's a huge, huge, huge benefit. So we talked about being able to borrow from the 401k, and I'm running out of time, so I'm going to kind of breeze through this. So you can borrow money from it. You have to pay it back. It's amortized over 5 years. You have to charge yourself an interest rate. So those are things that we can do. I had one of my clients in 2011. At the end of this class, he came to me and said, Adam, I'm retiring in 2 months. I'll be 65 years old. He was an engineer. He said, I am so sick of work and I cannot wait to retire. He said, but we sat down with our guy at Fidelity, and we've got about 600,000 in the 401k. The guy at Fidelity said that if we pulled out $7,000 a month, which is what he was going to need to live on, he said, I didn't think I'd need that much when I retired, but my house still isn't paid for. My wife has super expensive medical visits and prescription drugs. 7 grand it is. The guy at Fidelity said, well, if you pull $7,000 out, your 600,000 is going to last for 10, maybe 15 years, depending on the stock market. I said, all right, Rick, then what? He said, well, Adam, I'll be 75 or 80 years old. I'll be damn lucky if they hire me as a greeter at Walmart. I'm not banking on Social Security to be around. So we rolled his funds over, and he used his $600,000. We bought 7 rentals. This is in 2011. 7 rentals at that time. The total purchase price was $576,000. That produced just under the $7,000 a month that he was looking for. But Rick just put himself in a position that he will always have the rent coming in. He is never going to run out of money. Always have the rent. And he called me as a few years ago. His wife was getting worried because he's getting up there in age and wants to make sure the estate planning was in order. And so we were talking. I said, how are those properties doing? He said, well, the properties that we bought at 576, he said, they're worth over 750, 800,000. This is a few years ago. He said, our rent has kept rising with inflation. The property managers keep raising rent, and we're in a really good position right now. So he said, now when I die, I thought my kids would be lucky if they inherited my house with a mortgage on it. Now, worst case scenario, they're going to inherit $800,000 worth of rental properties. He said, that might not be a lot of money to you, Adam, but that is going to change my kid's life. So that was a great alternative to being invested in the stock market, owning the rental property. So it is an option. Now I bring that up because I talked earlier about the UDFI tax. It's called an unrelated debt financed income tax. And the problem with an IRA is when you leverage funds, you don't have to pay cash for properties in the retirement account. You can do what's called a non-recourse loan. So the IRS says, if you're using retirement funds, you cannot personally guarantee the loan. It must be non-recourse. If you don't make the payment, the bank cannot come after you. They just get the house back. So because it's riskier for the bank, they make you put 50% down. So if we leverage funds, Like Rick, if he had came to me 5 years earlier and said, Adam, I got 600 grand, we're going to retire 5 years, I would have rolled that over. And instead of buying 7 properties, we would have bought 14. And the way it works is if you would have followed this system mathematically, we took all your positive cash, pay off the smallest mortgage first. Once that's free and clear, we take all the positive cash, pay off the next smallest mortgage. So mathematically, all 14 properties would have been free and clear within 5 years' time. And instead of collecting just under 7,000 a month, he'd have been collecting just under 14,000 a month. So it was a great opportunity to leverage funds when we're using retirement accounts. IRAs can leverage funds, but they get whacked with this UDFI tax, unrelated debt financed income tax, very quickly climbs to 37%. The solo 401k is exempt. It does not pay the UDFI tax. So anytime I'm talking with any of my clients and we have the ability to do a solo 401k versus the IRA, we always go solo K. They're such a better vehicle, again, especially if you're looking to invest in real estate using your retirement funds. So that covers everything that that I wanted to cover today. And I hope that, I talked about learning information and attacking this with the heart of a teacher. And for those of you that I can still see, by show of hands, how many of you learned something good today? Yes? Okay, good. Because it's taking time out of your day, time away from your family to learn and educate yourself. But I firmly believe that the more knowledge you have, the more equipped you are to make good decisions. So hopefully, if you're thinking about forming a new LLC, we absolutely set it up in Wyoming. We register, so we form it in Wyoming, register appropriately with whatever state you're doing business or whatever state you're buying property. That gives us all those legal protections of Wyoming. So taxes, we would help you obviously determine should be taxed as an S corp, partnership, disregarded. Those are all different things that we just have to work through and figure out what you're doing and how you're doing it. But that's what me and my team, we're experts in these things, and we can help and guide you to do it the right way. So I wanted to go ahead and open this up. And if you're still with us, I want to open this up for any questions that anybody has. And let's take it from there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Adam. Derek, I know you're going to switch back to your set of slides. And Adam, I actually saw your presentation over at ADPI Con, and even then, even now, seeing it again, like I've been able to take like that much more notes because a lot of this information is just really, really good stuff. So, and just for everyone's knowledge, if a lot of this topics or these ideas and strategies are new to you, don't remember that we're recording this. So, take the notes you have right now, take the time to ask questions, and then just know we'll provide you the recording. So if you need to go through and be like, yeah, I got, Adam said this one thing, I only wrote this one note, but let me be able to go back, you will have that opportunity. But I'm going to stop talking now and let's get the questions out there. What do you guys got for Adam?
Well, I did see one that Anthony put on the post that TSP loans have to be paid back upon separation, though. And yeah, so if you take a loan from your TSP, which you can, it does. If you leave, you still got to make your payments back. If you don't make the payments, then they would tax you on whatever payments you failed to make and penalize you 10%. So yes, if you're taking a loan from whether it's a 401k, solo K, TSP, if you're taking a loan from it, yeah, you got to pay it back. If not, taxes and penalties.
Awesome, Adam. I've got a couple of questions that we have kind of banked. So real quick, one of the questions that I had from somebody was, so obviously most of us are overseas, and can NCH, open bank accounts or handle some of the other hands-on services for members that are stationed overseas when you guys are, setting up the entity and or asset protection strategies?
As a great question, and yes. So when we form an LLC, we're going to ship you out a corporate record book. And for people that are in the military, obviously I ship it overseas. If it's anybody not in the military, I got to pay, it costs me an arm and leg to ship stuff. But in the military, it's a piece of cake. We ship it out to you. You get a little box in the mail. It has a 3-ring binder with all your legal documents. When you get that, call my office. We'll schedule about 45 minutes of your time, cross the T's, dot the I's, make sure it's all set up perfect. We're partnered with two banks. We have Titan Bank, which is an online bank. They're headquartered out of Dallas, Texas. They have an office, but they're online. It's a 110-year-old bank, FDIC insured, but it's online primarily. That is a quick, less than 10-minute application. Boom, we can get the account opened up. We're also partnered with Bank of America. If you'd like to use B of A, that'll be an hour-long phone call. They have all these legal disclosures, as B of A does, but that's another option is open through B of A. So even if you're not in the US, the problem is with any other bank, if you go to Chase, for example, they make you appear in person. And if you're not registered with the state that you're showing up in, they won't open the account. So Titan and B of A, we can actually form the company before you even get the documents in your, or we can get the bank account before you get the documents in your hands. So it is a great option.
Awesome. And it looks like we have a couple of hands raised. So I'm just going to call on them in the order that they're showing on my screen. Adele, can you please ask your question?
I'm sorry, that was accidental hand raise. Yeah, I don't actually have a specific question right now. I have a whole host of them. So I'll probably save them for a time when we call NCH and just get a consult.
Do you want to ask any particular one right now? We do have time to do that if you'd like.
I guess the biggest one is we have multiple LLCs. So we have an LLC in Florida, we have an LLC in Alaska. We used to have one in Nevada and Wyoming. If we wanted to take those two LLCs, do we have to have two separate? So if we wanted to go back to Nevada or go back to Wyoming and use the Florida and Alaska as a, what's it called? A foreign entity registration. Do we have to have two separate LLCs, or is there a way to do one large LLC with a couple smaller ones underneath? So yeah, if that makes sense.
It does. So there's different ways to operate things. You could set up a Nevada or a Wyoming company as a holding company to own your Alaska or Florida entities. I try and do my best to keep it simple. There are other companies that say, well, you have one company as a management company and the one's a C corporation, and then you have home state companies for all your other stuff. It turns into a nightmare to try and manage that stuff. So I want to try and have one LLC organized under the laws of Wyoming, registered appropriately with Florida, if that's where your property is, and just use that as your operating company. That gives you all the legal protections without having all these different entities and different fees and different bank accounts, et cetera. So definitely, and do you have that QR code that you might be able to throw on the screen? And for any of you that want to call and schedule some time, you can send me an email, adam@nchinc.com, or use this QR code, and we can schedule some time to just talk about your situation and specifically what you need help with. So, but the answer is yes, we could do that in your situation, set up a Nevada or Wyoming company to own your other businesses. We'll have to talk about how you're set up, and I got to ask you 10 more questions before I give you the right answer for that one.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Matt from Masawa.
Cool. All right. Question. What are the pros or cons of having your spouse as a partner in the LLC?
Well, I don't think it's a matter of pros or cons. I think it's a matter of keeping married and happily married. If you have a spouse, you probably are going to have them. You know, it's for my wife, what's hers is hers, what's mine is hers. So it really doesn't matter when you're married. Now, if you have premarital assets and you're one of those couples that want to keep things separate, you sure can. But at the end of the day, I have a revocable living trust owning different entities. Today, I have a guy that he does assisted living facilities, and he's closing on a new property in Florida right now. And he said, do I need to put my wife's name on record at this closing? And we're actually going to be moving that property into a land trust, and everything, all of his stuff is going to end up being owned by his family trust. So at the end of the day, we don't have to have his wife on there. she is protected because he has the revocable living trust. It says that if spouse A dies, if he dies, everything goes to her. So I think having spouse on record, unless they have if they're a doctor or they're a certain profession where it doesn't make sense to have their name on record, I see nothing wrong with listing them as managers alongside yourself. Or worst case, we could make them an authorized signer. So you might be on record as the manager of the LLC, and we could just make your spouse an authorized signer. So for long-term investments, it doesn't make much of a difference at all. But if you just have your own business, then I absolutely want to have my wife on record, because now when we do our annual meeting in Hawaii, my wife is part of my business. So her airfare, her hotel, her meals with me, all of those things we get to write off.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought, I guess, on the tax side of things, being a business partner with your spouse, how is that beneficial?
Yeah, absolutely is. And if we had, again, if we're doing like a solo 401k and you're taking a salary from your company, your spouse is taking a salary, both of you can make huge contributions into a solo 401k plan. So that could be another big advantage as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate you taking the time to ask the question. We're coming up to our 10 o'clock, so I think we've got time for one more question. I've got next Jerry. If you can ask your question, please.
Hi, I just had a question about the S Corp. You had indicated 30% reasonable compensation. I'm just trying to figure out, was that just an example or was that gotten from somewhere? Because the IRS definition is not 30%.
Yeah, so when we say the reasonable salary, every situation is different. So the standard, you need to at least take 30% as a W-2. So there's, again, the totality of the circumstance, depending on your situation and what you're doing. So for example, I have a client that has a physician, he's a physician, has a doctor's office, makes $5 million a year. And in his situation, his salary is $500,000. That is 10% of the net profit. So in his situation, it works for him. He's got 99 employees that work at this doctor's office. His salary is very small compared to his net profit. So every situation is different. Where we run into a problem is when people say, I'm not going to take a salary. I don't want to pay any Social Security and Medicare. I don't think it's going to be around by the time I retire. I want to take it all as a K-1. Well, what ends up happening, the IRS is going to make up a salary for you. About 3 or 4 years from now, they'll come back and say, hey, since you didn't take a reasonable salary, we're going to make one up. And we think reasonable is 100% of your net profit. Oh, and by the way, since you didn't take your reasonable salary to begin with, the penalty is now double. You now owe 30.6%. So taking the reasonable salary is super important. And there's actually, yeah, the IRS actually has a table depending on where you live and what profession. They have a chart or a table that they could use as a reasonable salary.
Yeah,
So good
I just thought it was a little misleading, because if someone's bringing in 100K, there's a good chance the services they're doing is worth more than 30K. That's what you have to watch out for.
Yeah, every situation is different. So this is what we have, people like you that are tax professionals guiding us through the way.
I didn't put that here. All right, thanks.
Jerry, thank you for taking the time to ask the question. Adam, appreciate you taking the time to answer questions. I think I had 2 more that had their hands raised. I implore you guys to reach out to Adam privately, shoot him an email or whatnot, and get those questions. And then for the benefit of the group, if you guys could, post those maybe back on ADPI, so that we can help further each other, that would be amazing. Hopefully everybody's got Adam's contact information off of the QR code. There was also a link posted in the meeting chat. If anybody needs that down the line, we can get that to you.
Perfect.
In addition, sorry, Adam.
I was going to say, I appreciate all your time today, and thank you for hanging in here with me talking about fun stuff like taxes.
Taxes are super fun. Also, for everybody that participated today and was here, we've got another QR code on the screen. This is a survey for the host for ADPI so that we can further these presentations and whatnot, and obviously present better products for you guys. So we would appreciate if everybody would take a couple minutes, like 2 minutes to do this. It's a 5-question survey on a Google form. It will greatly help us in moving forward. I'll leave this up for just a second. And then, Adam, did you have any closing remarks that you wanted to make beyond what you've already said?
Yeah, the question of whether or not when you're investing or anything else, do you have to have an LLC? Absolutely not. You can absolutely buy properties in your own name. You do not have to have LLCs. My advice is if you have something to lose, you should probably think about having that LLC.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. For me personally, and for all of the hosts here, we want to thank everybody for coming. Obviously, we want to thank Adam for being our guest speaker today and presenting the information that he did. Most everybody, I think, when he asked, who took something from today, raised their hands. So obviously, that's a huge focus for these groups, is to further everybody's education and honestly, be better than we are right now. So from ADPI and the Asia Pacific Virtual Series, we want to thank everybody for coming today, and feel free to stick around for a little while and do some networking if you so choose.
And then I'm just gonna throw in some last things too. So I just want to really do just a shout out to Derek. I don't know if you guys could tell, but this was actually his first presentation ever. He hasn't had a chance to do an in-person. He mostly has just done whatever the Air Force has forced him to do. So so this being his first rodeo, I think he did an outstanding job. So kudos to you, Derek, for taking the time to do this and all the little things that had to happen to make this possible. And then I also want to do a shout out to Kyle. So I know you didn't really see him as much. I know you've mostly seen him on the ADPI group posting all these wonderful things about this event. So he was our marketing coordinator for this one. And so so this slide, all the colors, all these little things, putting it all together to make it look cohesive, that was all Kyle. So